Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining us on live from the Tefs Tavern. This is Big Mike, and I'm joined here this week with Andy.
Hello.
And sitting with us today is a good old friend of ours. I've got Jason Graham from DarkAge of on YouTube,
Yes.
and well, that's about as official as we get right then and there.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I wanna thank you guys for inviting me on. Number one, number two, because Andy lives on the other side of the world, Mike and I have to get up on Sunday morning early, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
it's cruel and unusual.
It is cruel, but we'll do it for the bread.
That's right. That's right. We've
I, I
got a
do I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Honest.
What
that's
time
right.
is it where you're at? Two? Is it two?
So we're just 10 past 2.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
he's in the
Okay.
middle of his day. He's awake. He's had two meals in him.
Oh man, yeah,
Yeah, I'm
exactly.
about to have an afternoon nap, and
Nice, nice.
He's
so
already had
I'm going
breakfast.
back to my cage.
Awesome.
Oh man. So yeah. Basically, let's hit Jason with some basic "Who are you?" questions. What the hell are you doing here?
hmm
Uh, so how long have you been in gaming, Jason? When did you get started?
In 1979, my middle brother had two things hidden in his closet in the basement of my family home,
Hmm.
a Ouija board and the 1978 Holmes blue box set. And
Wow.
I absconded with his box set, which he had never used, and was mesmerized by Holmes Basic and began the process of trying to read it, understand it, and teach it to my buddies. And so we played a really bad, bastardized
Yeah.
version of Holmes starting in 1979, probably.
Always. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 1981 is when that's when D&D became what we did when we weren't doing other things. And that was the Moldvay Basic Edition.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And that's what I ran exclusively as a GM for from gosh, 10, 11 years old till 20. I was 26 probably. And then of course I left gaming for a long time, came back at 39, 40.
Holy cow.
Mm.
Thanks to the GameStop guys here in our local hometown. Sean and David said, we want to try this thing. And I said, well, I've got Labyrinth Lord. Let's do it. And that's how I got started back into gaming. And thanks to Sean and Dave and
That's
Mike
right.
asking me to run a little Labyrinth Lord for him, which I wrote my first module ever, which is the module that I'm going to try to publish using Andy's artwork and maps.
Oh,
So
too cool.
that literally started me back into gaming for the last 8 years. Yeah.
I
Jeez.
don't think you ever leave though, do you? I think when I started, it was probably the same sort of age, and then I got really into like music and skating and all that kind of stuff, and I left it behind for years, and then family and everything.
hmm
But I think if you do anything, if it's like role playing, wargaming, anything of that sort of thing that is in your skin,
hmm
and I think eventually you come back round to it. I
Oh
mean,
man. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we
Absolutely.
started with Pong and the Atari 2600.
yeah, yeah,
We moved on to the Commodore 64.
Oh
We were
man.
tabletop gaming, and then of course, as you get older, we were in college. We all got married. We all went on about our lives. Then we replaced that with computer games and then
yeah.
console games. And no, I have never been ever without gaming in my life on a daily
No,
basis
Right. You just
since
may
I
not
was
have been
7, 8. Yeah.
doing role playing, tabletop role
yeah.
playing at that time.
That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
the bottom line is, if without gaming, I would that. I mean, that's where I get my creative, imagine it. I do more gaming than I read, more gaming than I watch movies. That's how I've lived my life. Although I
Yeah.
love to read and I love to watch film, but man, gaming is what makes me want to get up in the morning.
Right. Right. We are as the punitive. We are gamers, so to
Yeah,
speak. So yeah.
that's
Whereas some
right.
Yeah.
people might, they enjoy going to movies or reading books. This
hmm
is our creative outlet as far
That's right.
as our escape, as I'm
Mm.
learning to coin it.
Yeah, and it's so funny because as a kid, I would watch. ESPN was born. We got cable when I was like 10. But we had satellite. We had the huge dish in our backyard. We were
You had
stealing
to go
signals,
outside
right?
and crank it to get better
And so
signals.
for me, everything in my life, and I literally, from as early as I remember, everything inspired gaming. So when I'd see kickboxing on the early ESPN, so early ESPN had a couple things. It had professional bowling and it had kickboxing.
Wow.
They hadn't, ESPN didn't have anything else, right? And so I would watch these great kickboxing, and so I invented a dice game of professional kickbox fighters, and we had heavyweights and welterweights, and when I'd read Tolkien, it would make us want to run to D&D and play Tolkien. We'd see Conan the movie, and everything is like everything that existed that I did outside only inspired me to want to go do it in gaming. It just inspired gaming.
Sure. I remember watching, like, say, when we had a bank holiday, they'd put on, like, Jason and the Argonauts.
Right.
And as soon as you went back to school, that's what you played.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
You were throwing those teeth in the ground and, skeletons were coming up.
And on recess, in the playground, we would actually play Star Wars or Black Hole or Jason of the Argonauts, and we'd be running around instead of playing cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians. We were playing Jason of the Argonauts. That's exactly right, Andy.
Yep.
The Brits do this thing like we do this thing.
Weird. They're almost like regular people.
I did with my imaginary friends.
See, there's a caveat.
I always assumed the Brits were pretending tea and crumpets and
high society,
Jane Austen, and
we're just as peculiar, but in a different peculiar way.
Right.
That's awesome. And to this day, I watch a movie and I think, damn, I gotta provide this for a group of guys at a table in D&D. Man, I really want to give them this Star Wars experience. I want to give them this. Yeah. But it's not passive, it's active. And they get to be these heroes doing this thing instead of watching it happen and and then being disappointed that the writers messed it up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the neat part was always, at least for me, because I was a little spoiled in the regard that my mother was a district manager for a chain of video rental stores. So I always had access to some obscure things that maybe people wasn't in the mainstream, so people hadn't had their hands on.
Right.
And, people always said, "Oh, Mike, what an original creative! I can't believe you came up with this and that." And so don't ever watch this movie; it's horrible. It'll give away my secrets.
Yeah, you're like the Quentin
just found
Tarantino.
a really old Italian film.
Without the weird foot problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I used to love those. They do like really funny sort of spin-offs of things like the Warriors classic film.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
They do stuff. What is it called? Bronx Warriors.
Yep.
And it was like really nothing to do with it, but they try and make a cover that looked like it would, so people would rent it. Because it was like, well, I like the Warriors, and what's this? And then it was really badly dubbed.
Right.
But equally charming. But yeah, it was some bizarre stuff.
It's so true. Conan's big, and then the spinoff of bad barbarian movies, right?
Yes.
Man. Well, you can see in the 80s and maybe even some of the early 90s had this thing that you just don't see anymore as far as that kind of genre where there was a tonality or modality of specific factions that our protagonist or protagonists are going to go up against.
Yep.
And as they go through the story, it would always, the whole world would shape differently as you went into this gang's area, and then they're all dressed the same, or even to the point of ridiculousness. These guys are all wearing baseball uniforms.
Right.
Yeah.
I would love to get into a tabletop of some sort that captures that.
I love the way I love the way that gang run out all in one line in the Warriors with the baseball stuff.
Oh,
amazing.
Cool stuff. Warriors,
yeah, and we don't, and I think that's because everything, you think about like American culture. American culture, when we got television, it was cops and it was westerns and a little bit about war stuff, right? And then in the 50s, we were very, very successful. The average household income our prosperity was at its absolute peak. Everybody was supposed to wear their hair a certain way, go to work a certain way, the wife and kids at home, leave it to Beaver. And then the 60s came and people said, hell no, I'm not going to be my dad, you know. And then the movies started to change. The culture started to change. And then the 70s, we get the hard-boiled TV and the hard-boiled things of American society like Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are going to civil rights has let bad guys walk the streets. You know, oh my God, the ACLU is allowing criminals to walk the streets. And so we have to create Dirty Harry to actually have justice. Then the 80s come, right? And the 80s say, wait a second, let's just get the hell off the planet. Let's go post-apocalyptic warriors. Let's go, let's go Mad Max. Let's go Star Wars. Let's go Conan. And that's kind of all of that follows this culture of who was dominating our television and our movie culture at the time. And of course, we don't make movies because that's what we want to make. We make movies because that's what sells to whoever the population is. So right now we're seeing a ton of superhero films because that's what the population seems to be buying, right?
People will just dump money into a superhero film.
Yep. And people run to see them.
I went and saw
right now, our movie-going culture
is
spending their money on those things right now. But in the 70s, the movie-going culture was, we got to justify what's happening in our society post 60s, post 50s, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and of course we were inflation and the economy was in the tank, and you know we were OPEC was born and terrorism was about. It's kind of fascinating.
The thing is that spreads over every pop culture thing.
Yep.
It's like what happens is like publishers, they go, right, we're going to release Call of Duty 855 because we know it's going to sell.
Yep.
But all independents, they've been struggling because I mean, okay, some of the platforms now they have more independent access, like the Nintendo Switch and stuff like that.
Yep.
But generally, any publisher that's going to release a hard copy will play it safe.
Yep.
They go, I want another Assassin's Creed. I want another this, that, and that. So it makes it harder then but then the market shrinks because there's only those titles available.
Bingo.
Right.
And the same thing happens with music, and the same thing, you know, it's like, I want the next Led Zeppelin.
Right.
But there isn't another Led Zeppelin.
That's
you go,
right. That's right.
And it shifts and roundabouts with it.
You don't think Kelly Clarkson's the next Led Zeppelin?
Well, I did.
We just lost some viewers. That's it. It's over.
She was the next. She was the American Idol, right?
Oh,
yeah,
unfortunately,
I did
that's
think
true.
that, and then I woke up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the whole thing, and it's the same what Jason was saying with films. It's the same that they'll release an annual Marvel summer film because it puts bums on seats.
That's it.
But I mean, there are still things. It's like when Jason was looking at some, I forgot what game it was, but I recommended to him to go and watch a film called The Witch.
Yeah, right.
And
I've got it. I just haven't watched it yet.
Oh man,
it's right over here on my desk.
Nice.
It's absolutely one of my favorite horrors of the past couple of years.
It's
Easy.
supposed to be really good.
Yeah,
it is, man. But it takes effort because it's not a standard horror.
right.
Really?
The actual people that are there, it's just a family, and they're from it sounds like Yorkshire accent to me. So it's very thick and it's very of the time. So even I have to like concentrate. So I would imagine anyone else that isn't used to that dialect, it's really hard, but it's just amazing.
Yeah, I watch everything now with subtitles, no matter what, because number one, I'm hard of hearing, which is why I yell all the time. And number two, because I don't want to miss all the subtle things that sometimes you miss, even if you hear well. So I'll watch it with subtitles, no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and the wife do that as well.
So there are things. It's just, it's not like, I think one of the earlier podcasts we were saying about when you used to go into stores and buy things physically, and their worth. When I used to buy a lot of albums, I had like my first job, disposable income, and I'd go in and I'd buy albums because I like the cover artwork. And I'd get it home and I'd think, God, that's a pile of shit. Or
Yep.
it could have been the best thing I ever heard,
Right.
but you didn't have the internet to tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you kind of experimented.
You know what's
I
so?
think.
You know what's missing? This is what's amazing. Well, I won't say it's missing. It's not fair. You and I, Andy, grew up in an era where we had the mystery of the adventure of, because there wasn't, your culture was your neighborhood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there was no way to go online and find out that there's this counterculture hip hop music. So you would walk into it. Like we had Sound Warehouse, which was and you'd walk in and say, I really dig this hip hop cassette. And guys would say, our hip hop section's over there. And you'd go over there and I'd browse for something that looked the most obscure and crazy, because I didn't want just that traditional MC Hammer horse shit, right? I wanted counterculture, dark, raw hip hop, right? And like skater music, like punk rock. To me, hip hop was I had a vast collection of same thing. All of my expendable income was on cassettes, because I'd listen in a car, I'd listen on a headset. So I didn't buy actual albums, but same thing. I wouldn't use the artwork though. I would use some semblance of genre.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the problem was so many things defy genre, and if you're not careful, and I agree with that, genre in a way was the thing that kind of put us in a hole. But at the same time, we had to then experiment, and we had to do it by randomly gambling on stuff, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, and you would. Sometimes you would just be like, "Oh, okay, this is utter crap," but you'd find that one B-side track that became your summer anthem, and it would just take over. And
then it goes on the
so
mixtape.
That's how I found. Yeah, exactly. Where you would have either you'd be blessed and you'd be the lucky kid that had a dual deck cassette player where you could record off of each other, or you were the poor bastard that had to set the speaker over the teeny tiny little 3 slits that were your microphone, and then you'd have the worst mixtape created ever.
Oh, it's so true. But now, I just shopping for OSRs. Just looking at all the games, I would have never known. And I was telling somebody, I've said this before, I'll say it for a long time. We are in the golden age of tabletop role-playing games, because anybody who has the wherewithal to write something and to make the effort to get artists and to kickstart it and put it out there makes it available to me. So some guy in Britain can say, check out this OSR that I've created with this flavor and these tweaks, and he can publish it in such a way that I go, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and I buy that sucker and I go, holy shit, this is amazing. Well, I wouldn't know that existed without the internet, without the culture, without this community.
Well,
and
that's the flip side, isn't it?
Yeah. And same thing with music. I found all kinds of music by just messing around on YouTube, and I'd click from one video to another until I found some obscure, like gangster bluegrass. Holy shit, where did that come from?
But isn't it awesome, incredible? It's
fucking incredible. I'm like, holy shit, thank you, YouTube.
It a very, very distinct point that if anybody on my friends list, I'm sorry, not everyone on my Facebook friends list is a friend, really, but anybody who posts things to my feed, and if it includes a music link, I'm going to at least give it a listen, because I have found so many things. Like a friend of mine posted 2 weeks ago an Afghani heavy metal band. And like the tagline at the bottom is
black metal band.
You'd have no idea how hard it is to rock on guitar riding a camel. And I was like, oh, I got to listen to that. I've got to listen. And it was insane.
And that's what's interesting, because, again, I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and I lived in a little cul-de-sac in a little suburb in outside the large city. But it was a military society. So I was actually, guys would come from all over the world. Guys would move into our neighborhood and they'd been stationed in Germany, and they'd show us this amazing German, metal band or something. So we were also, I had some of that luxury of kids moving in and out of my neighborhood. Yeah. Being a military society, I got a little taste of the world. My best friend was black, so I grew up with all the soul music and rhythm and blues music, and went to a Southern Baptist church with his family, only white kid in the whole church.
Nice.
But then my parents were, bluegrass. My brothers were rock and roll, and so I grew up with this very diverse culture. But at the same time, we're still limited to what's available to us that we can actually physically look at and go get. Mm-hmm. The internet has made us all, in a way. I mean, who would have thought that I would, being an Anglophile, that I would actually talk to Brits on a daily basis, that I would actually share with British citizens on a daily basis. And that to me is a wonderful thing, as opposed to living in this vacuum of the books and the movies.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is the whole reason why I'm here now, is because I was just looking and found Jason.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And just hassled him, and eventually he took me in like a stray puppy.
Yeah.
He did it to all of us, man. That's how I got here too.
Yeah, and then I'm at my, and now we play bizarre online miniature games weekly.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. And that is awesome.
we've started
Yeah.
what we're calling the 4,700 mile challenge because I Google
Wow.
mapped it, and from my front door to his, it's just over 4,700 miles. So
Awesome.
weekly, we are sitting down and trying a tabletop war game, and so far the score is 1-1.
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
toppled him a little, sort of. I eked out a victory in a game of Warhammer 40,000, which is
Yeah.
posted to Tefs Tavern. And just yesterday, we played in a game of a new tabletop war game, well, new to us, called Star Wars Legion. And oh boy,
Ooh,
it's
boy, you
it's
know, I've
Rebels
seen
versus
those.
Alliance, dude, and it's
That
oh
looks
boy,
so awesome, but damn, it's
Yeah.
expensive again.
it's
So expensive.
we're playing for $10 a piece.
Yeah,
Right.
Tabletop
and
simulator, man, it's the only way
You know,
to
we
do
don't
it.
have to
I've
pay
been
them.
looking at all the war game books on Amazon because I thought,
Yeah.
there's some amazing. There's like Dracula,
Yep.
where it's a
Yep.
Civil
Oh,
War
yeah.
war game where
Yeah,
Lincoln is
Dracula's
Dracula.
America.
Basically. Oh yeah, it's so amazing. There's so many
Crazy stuff.
great.
Well, again, Osprey books for reference are great
Yes.
because they do all the military stuff anyway from antiquity up.
Yep.
And obviously now they do their own games.
Yep.
And some of their little games are like about £10 each for the book.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Golden age of
But
RPG
so-
of tabletop.
Yeah.
games,
Well,
swear to
I
you.
said to Jason as well, like even if you buy them and use that influence for your game,
Yep.
your RPG game, because
Yep.
Dracula's America's got tons of shit in it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Wow.
And that kind of stuff, it's just a weird way of doing stuff.
Mhm.
That people, I think, now that they've got this access to all this stuff,
Mhm.
should just go, oh, I'm going to grab that because even if I don't play that, I'm going to use that piece of artwork because I know what I can do with that.
Right.
Yep.
And
That's right.
it's just been sort of stimulated by stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I own like 5 years ago, probably 10 years ago, I bought 4 Osprey books because I had found
Nice.
a British strategy PC game making company called Slytherin, and they made these historic
Yes.
war games. And they made a Caesar, and they made Alexander's, and they were war games. And so I said, well, I don't know shit about the tactics of Alexander and the cavalry. I don't know anything about Caesar and the tactics. So I went to my local game store where I lived at the time, or not game store, hobby shop, and bought all these Osprey books on Alexander and his wars and his tactics and Caesar, and then I could study those books so I could try to beat the damn computer in those Slytherin war games.
That is so funny. Slytherin
Yeah.
War Game. I just pulled them up. I had no idea, but they're actually the developer of Warhammer 40,000 Gladius Relics of War that I'm doing.
Oh,
I've
wow.
started a Let's
Yeah.
Play on this channel.
Wow. So if you go to there's a game company called Matrix Games, and they make a ton of strategy war games from I mean, they make even niche games like just the Tigris war between Iran and Iraq in the 70s or 50s, whatever time that was.
I see
60s.
that. Wow. Yeah.
And so Matrix Games has all these great tactical war games. And so I found these Caesar games by Slytherin there. They're distributors, by the way. They don't make them, they distribute those
Their
games. That's what,
distribution. Okay.
yeah, that's where I found Alexander's Wars and I found Caesar's Wars. And those Osprey books were unbelievable history. They're just history. They're basically history, but they break it into war tactics too.
Yeah.
So you can apply them to your tabletop war game if you're going to play a Alexander war game against your buddy Joe. And
Sure.
those tactics should matter, especially if you're following war game rules, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You have to be extraordinarily tactical.
I mean,
And-
they cover weapons used as well.
Yeah. Oh, and
It's
the
just
color of the
insane.
tartans. I mean, what these guys, the color of their helmets and tartans.
I
and,
love
Yeah.
that.
you know,
Oh,
so
I'm such a
I mean, if you're painting minis,
right.
man, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I'm such a fluff guy too. So like the idea that you're having fun, you're playing this tabletop game, you're following their rules, you're rolling their dice. I dig that. That's cool.
Yep.
But when you're doing that and following the historically, or even if it's sci-fi fictional, you're
Yep.
following the preordained fluff and somehow ties in with the rules in any way. Oh, I'm all over that. I'll quit my
it.
job.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm telling you, that's like I haven't played BattleTech or MechWarrior since
Oh,
FASA in the 80s.
Yes.
You know, and so I've been looking at the BattleTech starter sets, like $20, but unfortunately, it's only like a handful of figurines. But
Yeah.
that ties into a role playing aspect too. And you know, when we were kids, we played tabletop sports strategy games. we were the coach storming the sidelines, barking orders and sending in plays. And we were role playing in tabletop sports games. I mean, it's like, wow, can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine if you can start tying simple role playing elements into your BattleTech war game adventures? It's amazing. Yeah. And I've never war gamed other than PC. So this is a whole new thing for me. I'll probably start looking into. And the books, you're right. Andy's right. These books are affordable. You can pick whatever genre or topic you're really interested in.
Yeah.
They have niched it for us. So we can go grab Goblin Skirmish. We can go grab Goblin Skirmish for $11. Have a couple of 6-sided dice, build a goblin army, and Joe builds a goblin army. And we start rolling dice with a ruler and some minis, right?
Dude, I'm all over it. I want to do that now.
Well, what's the? This is a really good steampunk one as well.
Oh, there's so many, Andy. You're right.
That's my unicorn is steampunk. I've wanted to get in on a good steampunk game since I started rolling dice.
I love steampunk, but I have so little background in it that I don't quite know if I could do it as a GM. For instance, I would love to steampunk something, but I just know that I'll mess it up because I don't know enough about it.
Right.
It's basically, it's just one, don't stick a fucking cog on everything and call it steam, because that's just lazy.
Right.
It's just, I mean, Victorian period London is.
I love it. My favorite time.
But why don't you have that period in like America? Why don't you pick where like you two live and base it there? Yeah. The same principles apply.
For us, it's at that time, it's post-Civil War. So really, steampunk is H.G. Wellian post-Civil War alternative history.
Bicycle with a big front wheel, right?
Yeah, but with steam-powered shit. That's instead of science, it's pseudoscience, which is what makes steampunk so cool, right?
Well, the thing is then is that you would have then that steam is the thing. Electricity just doesn't happen.
That's it.
So you know those piano things that had the rolls with the notes on them and they played automatically.
Yes. Dang it.
Yes. I can't think of the name either.
Player piano?
Right.
Kind of like that, yeah.
So basically then you would turn that into a computer.
Yep.
That rolling.
Yep.
And recognizing the notes would be information like Braille almost.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. Yeah.
So
steampunk fascinates me, and I would love to get, and I know there are books available and there's some things available, but
I'm sure
to read a novel of, for instance, I just bought for Coin and Blood, which you play the badass. You play the evil sons of bitches in an OSR instead of the good guys, right?
I needed to get that one. That looks awesome.
And it's fantastic. The classes are great. The tweaks are great. But I don't know shit about grimdark as far as how do I provide a challenge for guys that are just evil, right?
Yeah.
So I bought Black Company thinking this might tell me something. Well, I got to read a 300-page novel that may or may not give me enough good information that I could successfully come up with some good grimdark gaming, right? Because I do take my job seriously as a GM, someone who wants to provide that genre right for my players. And the average player may come to my game and say, I don't know what grimdark is. They don't care, but I care, right?
Yeah.
Well, in my experience too, the more care as a game runner you throw into it, that comes through. Even if the player, even if you have one player who doesn't give a damn about tonality or mode, it's going to bleed through in one way or another. Yeah, and all of the guys that played Warhammer RPG back in the day, and all the guys that are playing what's it called? ZWEI. Zweihander.
Zweihander. Yes, which I own. I own that PDF. Really? The new Warhammer tabletop game comes out, comes out this month, doesn't it? Next month?
Well, Gen Con's next week. So.
Warhammer Fantasy, I believe.
Yes, Warhammer Fantasy. And those guys who grew up playing that, they know what grimdark is. And they're exposed to it. They've been reading Warhammer. They've been playing these Warhammer type grimdark role-playing games. Those guys would know exactly how to turn that OSR into grimdark. Yeah. I, on the other hand, don't have the experience. So
isn't it that Crucible 7?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it sure is.
7.
Yeah. The same guys that do Lone Wolf and the One Ring and Keltia, which I own, and I love those games. Cubicle 7, Doctor Who. They do Doctor Who.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that game. My good buddy Carl ran a couple of games of that. And man, the gradation of success available allowed in that game just really kind of
Yep.
tickled me. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Well, I love Cubicle 7. And I believe they're a British company. I believe they're British owned.
I mean, I got the Adventures in Middle Earth book for 5e.
Yes, and those are also
nothing else. It's just gorgeous.
Oh, the artist, and the artwork in those are fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Ah.
Have I overstayed my welcome? We're beyond 30 minutes, I think.
We have just hit our 30-minute mark. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of sign-off. And, Jason, we didn't get to talking about anything I invited you for, so we're going to have to bring you back sometime.
Okay, you got it. But let you know, this is really for Andy because I haven't had a chance to chat with Andy. I am finishing up the module with your maps and your art cover, and then I will submit all that sometime in mid-August to Chris Gonerman for Iron Falcon. I have decided I'm going to leave it with Iron Falcon.
Okay.
So anyway, everybody out there can look forward to maybe hearing a little bit about that. Well, hopefully it'll be something that Gonerman can publish. But I want to thank Andy for making those maps. They're fantastic, and I'm just now tying those maps back into my module. I have to edit my module a little bit.
It's been my pleasure because my main goal with it really was to enable you to do something.
Yep. Yeah, the module was written. I just had no maps for it. So you providing the maps. The one thing I don't do is art. So but it did by Andy offering to do it lit a fire that I could actually get it published, or at least submit it for the public, even if it's not published. We could certainly make it available via free access to the public. So
and we still need to sort out the Halloween shit because that needs to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen.
We'll have to make that work for sure.
Well, literally, there's blood in the map. My blood in it.
Oh no!
The first map that the players get when Jason actually when I get my ass in gear and finish putting it in order. And give it to Jason. The first thing that the players will get is a map that actually has my blood in it. So for Halloween, I don't know how you're going to do it, whether you're going to do it locally or whatever, but I certainly hope we can get that because I think
well, I'd like to put together 3 or 4 guys for a Halloween session live on YouTube. Now, what OSR I use, I don't know.
It doesn't matter, does it?
Fantasy or whatever, but we're gonna just do North Rock Abbey dungeon. I'm not even worried if it's tied to Esbalon or not. It's just the North Rock Abbey horror dungeon. Basically, it's be fun.
Awesome.
It's got the potential to go like 3 different dungeons in one setting.
Yep.
If you got the stamina.
Yeah, that's one of those. You want to start at like 2 p.m. and do a marathon and go all the way up to midnight or something. Halloween.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean,
so it's finding the sort of people that can commit to it because it is the way I envisage it. I think Jason does as well. That's how it's to be played. It's a one shot.
Yep.
Dungeon crawl of terror.
Yep.
And that's all it is. Complete in itself. Yep. But then we have to do the other module that you want to do after that.
Oh yeah, my goal would be to put together 3 modules for like a little mini campaign for Iron Falcon or something. And right now I've got the first one. Yeah. I've got tons of material that I've prepped, but I've never written a formal module. Believe it or not, I wrote this module for Sean locally, Mike, and David. I actually sat down and made a formal module for those guys. I didn't have to; they wouldn't have known anything. Right. Everything else I do when I prep, it's notebook paper, index cards, scribbled down notes. And so that's been sitting literally on a file for 9 years. And then I realized, you know what? If I could get maps, I would go ahead and try to get this, tighten it up, and publish it. And Andy said, I'll make maps. And so the very first thing that I'll attempt to publish will be the first thing I ever wrote formally when I came back to gaming with Labyrinth Lord, thanks to Sean, David, and Mike. And so it's full circle, man. The guys that asked me, would you do this for us? It's all going to come full circle. And it's cool that it ties 9 years later to Andy, who I met on Facebook and YouTube. So it's just full circle. It's amazing. It's this thing. And then from there, I'll worry about it. But North Rock Abbey, that would be a one-off crazy dungeon for Halloween. All right, guys, I'll let you go. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Andy, for having me on.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, man.
All right.
We'll talk
to
you
later.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And of course, guys, you can, thanks for listening. You can find us at tefstavern.wordpress.com. If you want to see us on the YouTubes, you'll also find us at youtube.com/c/Tefs Tavern. Both those links will be found below. I'll also be linking us off to Jason's YouTube page, which is a proper YouTube page where you'll actually find some good videos, unlike mine. And if you
Yeah,
like
he's
to,
professional.
he's quite good. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to hurl digital bananas at us, you can do so at tefstavern@gmail.com. So with that, we'll see you next week. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Take care, Mike.
And have a good week.